Hey, how's it going everybody? Shaggy from the Order of Mithril here, and today we're going to keep up the spooky season videos, and we're going to be taking a look at a Sega Genesis classic, Castlevania Bloodlines. So this title is a bit of an oddball amongst the Castlevania games. It was the first one where you didn't actually play as somebody from the Belmont clan. Another thing that was odd about it was that it's the only Castlevania game that was released for the Sega Genesis. And a final thing that made it a little different is this was actually released in North America December 1993 and Japan on March of 1994. This is the first time that a Castlevania was released in North America before Japan. So before I get into the full analysis of the title here, there were a couple of things that really stood out to me about this one. Now, I've already mentioned that this was the first Castlevania game where you didn't actually play as a Belmont through the title. Instead, you have a chance to pick between Mr. Morris here and his friend, Eric Lacard. Now, the reason that this is kind of odd is because Castlevania had its timeline set up, and then around this time they actually said that this was interwoven with a 90s horror classic, Bram Stoker's Dracula. You know, it had Gary Oldman, Keanu Reeves, and Winona Ryder in it. One of those guys that was trying to court the girl was actually this guy's father. Another thing that was really kind of different about it was this was a bit of a setup for a later title, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. As you can look at some of the way the art looks in this, you can definitely tell that they drew a lot of inspiration from this game whenever they were setting up Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But as you're looking here, this harkens back to the first level of Castlevania 1 in its layout. Full disclosure with this title though, I had actually never played this until I actually picked it up on the Castlevania Anniversary Collection on my Xbox. So this is going to be a first time look for me. So it's going to be a full review as opposed to looking at the way the game came out when it was originally released, as opposed to when it's in the Anniversary Collection. Now, I do gotta say that it is a bit of a change, and the way that everything looked was definitely noticeably different than the previous title, but I feel like it was a bit refreshing, and I can definitely see where they got some of the inspiration for the games that followed this one. Alright, with all that said, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of this. So as far as the art and the graphics go for this, it was definitely an extreme change from the last title that came out. The last one that came out was actually Castlevania 4 on the Super Nintendo, and I felt like they did a really good job with that, and they broke the mold that they had set themselves with and made some really cool changes, being able to swing the whip in 8 different directions. The way that everything looked and felt in that game was completely different, and I enjoyed that. Now this one, I want to say that it feels a little bit more like the older games, but not detrimentally so. I do like the return to the more panned out camera view as opposed to Super Castlevania 4. That Castlevania 4, it just seemed like it was so much closer, and it felt like a little bit of claustrophobia was setting in after playing it for a long period of time. So going from one game to the next, I really feel like this was a breath of fresh air for me playing through this title. Really enjoyed it. I was a little upset that I waited so long to actually try it. But that's just the art that we're going to look at. Looking into the audio, I kind of feel like it was a little bit more lackluster than the titles that came before it. The music was good, but for some reason it felt like it lacked that punch to me. It didn't seem to have that same essence that the last couple of games that came before it did. I'm glad to see that in the later games that they actually returned to that and actually gave a more full-bodied experience whenever it came to the music and the audio. Overall though, I would not say it was terrible or bad. I just felt a little out of place having played it, and some of that may be the fact that I waited so long to actually try this title, but that's, neither here nor there. I do feel, however, that some of the things that they actually added into this game and some of the ways that they changed certain things came out pretty well. Like the way that the holy water burns, the way that the boomerang blade sounds whenever it's used, it all had a unique sound, and I felt like they did a good job with that. My biggest issue with the audio is again just the music. It felt like it lacked a bit of the punch that the older games had. Considering the gameplay here for a moment, I gotta say that it felt like it was a little bit more fast-paced than, say, 1, 2, 3, or 4 that came before it. It did seem like it was upped in speed a little bit, and then that's not something that I necessarily dislike. It caught me off guard a little bit having played the earlier titles for the earlier videos that I've put out. So it was, I don't want to say a breath of fresh air, but it was definitely different, and I enjoyed it. One of the things that did kind of catch me off guard though, and I'm still not sure exactly what they were, but there are times whenever I pick up some kind of magical ability and instead of throwing out the whip, I'm throwing out like a blue flame. And I never really figured out exactly what that was or what it was that I was picking up to give me that ability. I did like how they did leave some mainstays into this title, like being able to break down the wall and find the wall chicken or the wall turkey or the ham. Those things I was glad to see return. The whip cracking and the whip action coming back and it being more of a traditional Castlevania style, I really did enjoy. I did miss the multiple ways I could swing the whip from 4, but I felt like this title lends itself to just being able to attack forward and backward, crouch, and jump with attack. I figured it lended itself a little bit better than being able to swing in multiple directions. One other thing that I was kind of, I had mixed feelings about it. In the older titles, there was a degree of difficulty to each game that came out. In this one, it kind of felt like I couldn't tell if it was just hard or if I was playing it wrong, so I'm not entirely sure how to rate it as far as difficulty goes. But I would like to say that there were times when it felt like it was really easy, and there were times where I felt like it was a little bit harder than what I was expecting it to be, and that's probably because there were points where it was really easy. Taking a look at this title's replayability, one of the things I was glad to see make a return for this one was, if you'll notice in the top of the screen, I'm actually gaining score. And that's one thing I feel lends a lot to replayability, especially for these earlier titles. You can always go back and try to beat your score for a certain level or for the game as a whole. I don't believe that there's anything but the 2 endings that you're going to get for playing as the 2 characters. So, I mean, if you really wanted to, there's at least 2 playthroughs of this title. One is Lacard and one is Morris. And that's pretty good, I feel, especially for these earlier titles. We didn't start seeing a lot of multi-branching endings in games as a pretty much mainstay, as a pretty much necessity, until we got into the more modern era of gaming. And even then, it's not that big of a deal for most titles out there. But there are some that do specialize in multi-branching storylines and multiple endings. With that said, this older title having the ability to give you 2 different endings plus allowing you to try and beat your own scores was great. I'm happy to see it whenever older games had this in them. All in all, I feel like this chapter in the Castlevania saga was decent at the very least, but I did find it to be very enjoyable, and I think it's a good game overall, especially for the period of gaming that it came out in. I am going to take a minute here, and I'm going to ask you guys, what types of games do you like to play during the spooky season? Do you have like a thriller, a survival, or do you just like the old motif of killing monsters? Tell me what you like to play during the Halloween season. And beyond that, tell me what type of movies you like to watch. Do you like really scary? Do you like thrillers? Do you like dramas? Tell me down in the comments section below. But with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this video today. But thank you again for stopping by. Please like and subscribe to the channel and tell some friends about us. Have a great one.